Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Have a few people still joining here. Give it maybe 60 seconds and then we'll get started. If everybody wants to pop in the chat where they're calling in from, what company you're with, I'd love to see who we've got here with us. I'll start. I'm calling in from Washington State over here, all the way on the West Coast here. Hey, Deborah. Hey, Krista. Teresa. Thank you guys all for joining. I think we still have a few people trickling in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started because we have quite a packed agenda today. So I am really excited about today's webinar because this is a really important topic and one of my favorite things to talk about, and that is the role that manager engagement plays in your recognition program. So today we're going to talk about what we can do to turn your managers into your most powerful culture drivers. So I want to start with something that probably will feel very familiar for a lot of you. A lot of organizations tell us that they had a great launch, energy was really high, adoption was strong, things were looking really promising, but then over time, that momentum fades. You might have some managers that stay engaged, you might have others that drop off and stop using the program completely. And what happens is recognition starts to feel inconsistent across different teams. And that inconsistency really matters because what that means is employees are having very different experiences depending on who their manager is. If this sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. This is something that we hear very consistently and that we see almost everywhere. And that's exactly what we are going to focus today's session on. So I'm going to start with a quick poll. Let's do a quick pulse check on how consistently you feel your managers are recognizing employees today. Deanna's going to kick off our poll here for us. So what I want you to do is rate your manager participation. Answer honestly. There's no right or wrong answers. I'll give everyone just a minute. Are your managers very engaged? Are they somewhat engaged? Do you feel like they're rarely engaged? Or do you feel like managers just really are not bought in and engaged at all? I think we have almost everybody answered here. Okay, Dan, I think we have pretty much everybody. We can go ahead and close that out. Let's go ahead and display those results. And this is pretty expected. We have most everybody is saying that their managers are somewhat engaged. So they have maybe a group of managers who are really consistent in their recognition practices. And then they have others who are maybe inconsistent or don't recognize at all. And then the next strongest group is rarely engaged. So those two middle grounds is definitely what the expectation is. Interestingly, nobody said that their managers are very engaged. So what that means is we're all in the right place. We're going to learn a lot today. And that's exactly what the challenge that we're here to unpack today. So let's dive into it. I want to talk about why managers matter. So your managers play a critical role in the success of your recognition program because they directly influence how your employees experience appreciation on a day-to-day basis. So those company-wide recognition initiatives, those help. They help create structure and visibility, but your employees are going to be most impacted by the behaviors of their immediate manager. We see a lot of research that supports that when managers consistently show recognition, they can be one of the strongest drivers of employee engagement. There is a statistic from Gallup that found that managers account for 70% of the variance in team engagement. What that means is the manager relationship heavily shapes how connected, motivated, and valued employees can feel at work. And recognition from managers, it carries a unique weight. Employees are more likely to see manager recognition as meaningful because their manager is the one that understands the work that they're doing every day, understands their contributions, they understand their growth over time. And so managers often will underestimate how impactful a quick, timely acknowledgement from them can really help to reinforce behaviors, boost overall team morale, and really just strengthen the trust within the team. Managers also help set the tone for recognition culture. So when you have your managers consistently recognizing employees, it also encourages that peer recognition. So you'll see overall increased participation. And the result is that appreciation starts to feel like a normal part of everyday work rather than just something that happens sporadically or something that's like an occasional event. So ultimately, the moral here is that recognition programs are going to be most successful when you have managers that actively participate. Technology, company-wide initiatives, those can enable recognition, but your managers are really what's going to bring your program to life. And that's going to happen through consistent leadership behaviors and genuine appreciation. So now that we know why we need managers to participate in our engagement or in our recognition programs, let's talk about why we all kind of answered that our managers are either somewhat or rarely engaged. And this is the important part. This is not usually going to be about managers not caring or intentionally choosing not to participate. Most managers genuinely want to support and recognize their teams, but they're balancing competing priorities, constant deadlines, operational pressures, and realistically just limited time throughout the day. So what happens is recognition often becomes something that managers mean to do later. They see something great and they think, oh, I've got to recognize that employee for doing that. But then later turns into next week, and eventually it becomes inconsistent or reactive instead of just part of their normal leadership routine. In many organizations, managers are also expected to drive engagement without really being given clear guidance on what great recognition actually looks like. We just assume, but they may not know how often they should be recognizing employees, what types of recognition is most meaningful, the impact that their recognition can have, or really how to incorporate it into their everyday work in a natural way. And when recognition feels unclear or it feels too manual or just like disconnected from their daily workflow, it's easy for it to fall lower on the priority list, especially when managers are being measured on so many other responsibilities. So when you combine all of those factors, recognition doesn't disappear intentionally, it just gets deprioritized. And that's why low manager participation, it's not an individual performance issue. It's more of a systemic challenge that organizations need to intentionally design for and support. So I want to outline the Four most common barriers that managers face that cause them to be disengaged or not as consistent in their recognition. And these are important because these challenges are incredibly common. What we see across organizations is that again, low manager engagement, it's not usually caused by lack of caring or even resistance. It's predictable operational and behavioral barriers that show up over and over. We see this showing up regardless of company size, company industry. Most organizations are dealing with some combination of all four of these barriers, just potentially to different degrees. So the first barrier is time, and this one is probably the one that we would probably think of first when thinking of barriers against manager engagement. Managers are balancing a huge number of responsibilities. They're leading teams, they're handling operational priorities, they're putting out fires, responding to issues, attending meetings, coaching employees, trying to hit a slew of business goals. And they're doing it all at the same time. And again, because of that, recognition can start to feel like an additional task instead of just a core part of their leadership role. And as workloads increase, urgent work naturally takes priority over, over important but less immediate behaviors, which is what recognition is. The second barrier is expectations. Again, met in a lot of organizations, recognition is encouraged, but it's not super clearly defined as part of the manager role. So we might say, we want you to recognize, but we're not really saying that this is a core part of your role. So they hear that recognition is important, but they're not really giving clear expectations about what good participation looks like. How often should they be recognizing employees? What makes recognition meaningful? What behaviors should they reinforce? And without that clarity, that's when participation becomes inconsistent, and it heavily depends on the individual habits or personalities. And again, that's where you start to see employees getting different experiences based on the team that they're a part of. The third barrier is friction. So even when managers want to participate, the process itself might not feel easy or natural. So maybe they're more of a frontline manager. They're not sitting in front of a computer all day. So what have we done to make recognition accessible and easy for those types of managers? Maybe recognition lives outside their normal workflow. Where are they spending most of their time? Is it Outlook? Is it SharePoint? Is it Teams? Is it Slack? Have we made recognition available and easy for them within their normal workflows? Maybe they have to leave an email and go to a completely other system just to complete a recognition. You're going to see recognition participation fall if it takes even just 2 extra steps for them to send a recognition. So removing that friction and making recognition as easy as possible can significantly increase recognition over time, especially for busy managers. The fourth barrier is visibility. So oftentimes we hear that managers don't have visibility into their own recognition activity or the impact that that recognition activity is having. So leadership teams might not really have clear insight into what the participation trends are across the organization. And this is really where you guys as admins come into play, because without that visibility, it becomes difficult to create accountability, to identify coaching opportunities, or to reinforce the positive behaviors. And when participation isn't visible, it quietly becomes inconsistent without anybody realizing it until you see your engagement start to decline. So again, these are the 4 barriers that I think we see most often. Typically, companies are going to deal with all 4. And improving manager engagement usually requires addressing each one of them intentionally. And that's what we want to do today. But before we do that, I want to do one more poll. Um, for this poll, we are going to, I want you guys to share which of these barriers, and you don't have to choose one. You can choose all four, or just a couple. What do you guys think your biggest barriers for manager engagement are? Also, if you think that there is an additional barrier that your managers are facing, pop that into the chat. We'd love to hear that as well. We'll give just a quick second here. So, are you seeing lack of time, unclear expectations, too much friction, lack of visibility? Maybe all four. Let's see. I'll give it just a second. I think we have almost everybody who's filled out. Okay, so let's take a look at the results here. Looks like a lot of people did choose more than one, with the two top barriers in this group, anyways, being lack of time and unclear expectations. So good news is we're going to cover all four. But those two, specifically being the highest, we're going to make sure that we give you guys the tools to overcome these barriers. Did I stop sharing the results? Perfect. So now that we have talked about why manager engagement is important, and we've talked about some of the barriers and challenges that managers have with consistent recognition, I am going to pass over to Alexia, and she is going to talk about 5 important levers that will help drive that manager engagement.
Thank you, Brittany. To solve for these barriers, we have these 5 key levers: manager buy-in, expectations, enablement, visibility, and reinforcement. These are very practical, real-world approaches to influence behavior over time. The important thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to tackle everything at once. It's really about building a roadmap for improving manager engagement step by step. Next slide, please. So let's start with manager buy-in. I wasn't surprised to see the lack of time as the number one obstacle that people have. If managers aren't involved, it is often that they have a lot on their plates. And if it doesn't feel like if it feels like a new task that isn't strategic, it just doesn't make it to the top of their list. So it helps to set the stage by emphasizing that this is a strategic program and that their participation, it's not admin work, it's leadership. Managers have a huge impact on culture, and culture has a huge impact on performance, engagement, and retention. Next slide, please. And it's more than that. Participating in a recognition program actively actually has a lot of direct benefits for the managers personally. You can see from these stats, their direct reports actually do want more feedback, and they want positive reinforcement from their managers. It makes a difference. And it's good for managers too. After all, if their direct reports are more engaged, they're more productive. If they feel valued, they're more likely to stay. And if you're giving them feedback on a regular basis, instead of once a year in a high stakes performance evaluation, they know exactly what they're doing right, and they can give you more of those behaviors that you're trying to reinforce. If you think about it, in some ways, starting a new recognition habit is kind of like starting a new exercise program. At first, it feels daunting and really hard to get up in the morning and go to the gym, or to put those running shoes on and get out on the trails. But once you get started, it gets easier. And once you've developed a habit, it becomes second nature, maybe something you even look forward to. It feels good, and you start to see results. It's kind of a virtuous cycle. And the same thing is true with recognition. Next slide, please. So the second lever is expectations. Managers need clarity on what good actually looks like. How often should they be recognizing their direct reports? What does meaningful recognition look like? What should it include? Next slide, please. As you probably know, we recommend recognizing good work as close as possible to when it happens. That helps to make the connection to the behavior being rewarded. We recommend taking advantage of those spontaneous moments, but at a minimum, creating space on a weekly basis to reflect and recognize the behaviors you want to encourage. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time. I know some of our customers put a calendar invitation to themselves, a task once a week for 5 or 10 minutes is really all it takes to just think, what happened this week? What went really well? And who should I be recognizing for that? The more you do it and the more it's a habit, the less time it takes. Um, we also find that quarterly team meetings or all hand company meetings are a great opportunity to give a shout out to people who are exemplars of your company values. And those are situations that you're already preparing presentations for. So it's incremental time spent to put in recognition there. And of course, many companies do formal recognitions of particularly notable achievements on an annual basis. Next slide, please. Aside from timing, what makes a recognition meaningful is specificity. Not just good job, but you handled that difficult customer with grace and poise, or your attention to detail saved us from having to start all over from scratch, including the impact, how it helped customers or coworkers, or improved a process, or simply made something better in some small way, also ties the behavior to outcomes. And that's what gives it the business value. And of course, authenticity. People can tell the difference between something that's heartfelt versus something that's a check the box. Providing these best practices and expectations removes a lot of guesswork. Managers don't have to interpret it for themselves or wonder if they're doing it right. And importantly, this shifts recognition from something that's optional into something that's expected as part of a manager's role. That clarity alone drives a big improvement in results. Next slide, please. Which leads us to our next lever, enablement. If recognition feels like extra effort, or if managers don't feel confident about how to do it correctly, it's not going to happen consistently. Removing those barriers can make all the difference. There are two key ways to enable recognition among managers. The first is creating simplicity, embedding recognition into the tools that managers are already using, whether that's email or chat or Slack or mobile, meeting people where they are so they don't have to move to a different app and log in and send a recognition and then go back to the app that they were already using to get back to work. The more seamlessly they can send those spontaneous recognitions when they see good work, the better. The second is education. A lot of managers, as Brittany said, they do want to recognize more, but they're not always confident about how to do it. They may be unsure what to say. How detailed does it need to be, or whether it'll land the right way? Giving them examples by your own recognitions that they can see on the streams, or providing a list of best practices with some examples can go a long way towards building that confidence. You can even recognize a manager for a particularly well expressed recognition, which others would then see as an exemplar from one of their peers. Removing obstacles, removing uncertainty, that's what it's about. What we consistently see is that when it's easy to do and people understand best practices, confidence goes up and consistency follows. The quality of the recognitions typically go up as well. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen over time. Next slide, please. And the next lever is visibility. You've heard the expression, what gets measured gets done. It's true here too. When behavior is visible, it naturally improves. So, this is about giving managers insight into their own activity, how often they're recognizing, and what that looks like over time. It also gives leaders visibility into team participation, which makes it much easier to coach and support their employees where it's needed. The key point here is that visibility creates accountability without needing heavy enforcement or pressure. Providing the data and benchmarks can help managers to understand what they're doing well and where there are gaps that can be addressed. Next slide, please. In a few minutes, Brittany will show you how you can find this information easily and empower your managers to find the data that's specific to their team. Next step, please. And finally, reinforcement. If we want managers to recognize their employees consistently, we need to reinforce that behavior. That means highlighting managers who are doing it well, sharing strong examples, and making it visible across the organization. It can also show up in leadership conversations and performance discussions. Because over time, what gets reinforced becomes habit. And once recognition becomes habit and you see the results, you get that virtuous cycle that benefits everybody, managers and individual contributors alike. Next slide, please. Here are a few examples of actions that reinforce manager participation. Simply recognizing them, creating quarterly or annual awards for managers who are doing a good job with recognitions, and reinforcing and repeating what the expectations, benchmarks are, and celebrating progress towards the goal of a consistent recognition program can help with that leadership habit. And now let me turn it back to Brittany.
Perfect. So I want to make a quick shift here from concept to application. When you guys join our webinars, I always want to make sure that you can leave with some actionable insight and really learn something new about how, as admins, you guys can take away from the topic that we're discussing. And for this topic, I want to make sure that you as admins know how you can actually see which managers are actively recognizing, which ones are inconsistent, and where those gaps exist. And this is where we can really see that shift happen because you move from assumptions or anecdotal feedback to using clear data. And you'll be able to quickly identify who are your high performing managers, lean on them for best practice support, spot those who need support, and really just understand exactly where your engagement is breaking down. And that's going to allow you to be much more intentional with your coaching, your follow-ups, your communication. Instead of just taking a one size fits all approach, you'll be able to really pinpoint where the engagement is breaking down in your organization. So I'm actually going to steal the share from Dana. Replace current share. Okay. Give me a thumbs up, Dana and Alexia, if you can see my test account. Perfect. Thank you. So I want to go over a couple of different things. First, from an admin perspective, I want to show you how you can identify the gaps in manager engagement. And then we'll dive into what your managers have access to and how they can kind of reflect and track their own engagement. So at a very minimal level, which I think most of you probably have, we need to know who your managers are and who their direct reports are. So if you go into your platform and this is not consistently filled out, we are missing data. We're missing critical information about who your managers are and who their direct reports are. And that's going to make it really difficult to be able to spot who your top performers are and where those gaps are. So that's just at a very minimal level. But we're going to assume that we all have this in our system. And we're going to go into the dashboard and I'm going to show you a couple of tips and tricks to gauge where your manager engagement is at today. So we can look at just kind of an overall snapshot of manager engagement by going to your RES page. RES, if you don't know, stands for Recognition Engagement Score. And this is going to help measure program reach and program engagement with your employees. What we're particularly interested in today is the engagement of our managers. So we can grab our manager role that we're interested in, and we can get a clear view of the engagement that our managers have. So this side is the recognition that your managers have received, which is also great and important, but we're mostly interested in the engagement by sender. So this is the percentage of your managers who are sending recognition. And you can see this in three time frames, a rolling month, a rolling quarter, and a rolling year. Quarter is a great spot to look at just because it gives you a good, obviously we want managers sending more than one recognition a year. So quarterly is kind of a great spot to get a good set of data. But monthly as well. Really, we want to get to a point where managers are consistently sending recognition on a monthly or weekly basis. But if you're struggling, start with increasing your quarter number and then move down to monthly. So we'll keep in mind that this is my test account. So the data is not super robust. However, you can see in this example that only 8% of the managers in this account have sent recognition in the last 30 days, 25% in the last quarter, and then 58% in the last year. What we see in terms of our customers who have really, really strong manager engagement is that on a yearly, you're closer to 100%. On a quarter, you're closer to a 90%, and then a monthly, you're closer to an 80%. So that's what a really, really healthy program looks like. And that's where you want to strive to be. So again, this gives you just a snapshot of what your overall manager engagement looks like. If we want to dive deeper into who are our top performers and who are struggling, the top employees page is a great place to go for that. We, again, are interested in recognitions sent. We can adjust the time frame here if we want to look on a quarterly or monthly basis. And then again, we want to use our manager role. So this is anybody who has at least one direct report. And here we can see, well, I actually want to also include those who have sent 0. And here I can see a list of all of my managers. I can see the managers who have sent the most recognitions. And I can also see the managers who are either inconsistent or not sending at all. Kate Winslet is clearly the rock star in this test account at 20 recognitions. But this is where you can start to identify those gaps. Reaching out to your top performers, I always love to suggest reaching out to your top performers and finding out, number one, what are their best practices? How are they able to consistently send recognition? How do they have that worked into their daily workflow? And then the other thing that I like to suggest asking top performers is, what impact have they seen? What have they seen in their team culture? What have they seen in like the effectiveness of their employees? What have they seen in like retention rates? And that is information that you can share with your managers who are less consistent. I'm sure we can probably all relate that if, we're an upper management or a HR person telling a manager, hey, here's another tool, here's another test that we want you to do, they may not take it as positively as they do hearing from a direct manager peer. what's working for them and how they have seen a positive impact in their team because of increased recognition. Um, and then on the flip side of that, reaching out to your underperformers, again, it's very rarely an issue of a manager is resistant or they don't want to recognize their direct reports. There's usually a barrier. So reaching out to your underperformers and finding out directly from them, maybe we're using a recognized survey to survey managers to find out where those barriers are existing within your organization, and then working with your recognized customer success manager to break down those barriers. Um, let's see. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is just some simple settings that can help increase visibility. So, just a couple of settings that, as admins, you guys can double check on to make sure that your managers are seeing and being reminded of recognition. So, if we go to our settings and then I think under manager settings, that takes me far enough. Um, so these notification settings are all really important, and you're going to want to make sure that these are on in your settings. So this one is going to let you know when, as a manager, I would get an email when one of my direct reports receives a recognition. And this is really important because we're not only talking about managers sending recognitions, we're also talking about managers reinforcing of the recognitions that their direct reports have received. So, it feels really good when my direct peer sends me a recognition for something I've done, but it feels a lot better if I know that my manager saw it and commented on it or reacted to it. So, allowing that visibility for your managers to know when other people are recognizing their direct reports allows them to just add that additional value in a really easy, simple way. And then, of course, managers getting notifications when one of their direct reports has a service anniversary or a birthday. Those are just those built-in recognition moments that without visibility can go unnoticed. And again, just a really easy, simple way for managers to boost a little bit of that recognition in a really easy way. The next one is recognition reminder notifications. So these go out every Thursday to managers, and the emails are really smart. They're going to know for the manager that it's being sent to, they're going to know which of their direct reports has been recognized the least recent, and they will specifically mention that direct report. So it might say, hey, what has Bob Smith done this week that deserves recognition? How is Jane Doe supporting the company values? And so it's just that weekly nudge to your managers, where they can think it's not on Friday, so they're not quite ready for their weekend, but it's on Thursday, so a lot of the week has already happened, where they can just take, like Alexia said, 5 to 10 minutes, doesn't even take a lot of time. It's that weekly nudge for them to say, what's happened this week? What are 2 or 3 people that have contributed this week in a positive way? Let me shoot them a quick recognition. So these are notifications that I would encourage you to check and make sure that you have on. One little caveat that I will say is that some of these are set at the time of the account creation. So if you feel like you might have one of these on, but your managers aren't consistently receiving them, it could be that the option was toggled off at the time their account was created. And we do have the ability to do a setting sweep for all of your managers. So if you're unsure, if maybe you have them toggled on, but you're unsure if your managers are really consistently receiving these, you can always send an email to support@recognizeapp.com and ask them to just do a setting sweep for your managers to make sure that this is in fact toggled on for all of your managers. So the next thing that I want to make sure that as admins we're all aware of, because admins, you might not see this if you're not if you don't have direct reports yourself. So I just want to throw this in here too. Anybody who has a direct report assigned to them in Recognize has a manager portal by default. It'll just show up for them. And their manager portal, their dashboard will look identical to what the company admin dashboard looks like, but it's just for their direct report team. So all of those things that we talked about, like RES score, top employees, they can see all of that data themselves for their direct report team. So for like RES score, they're going to be shooting to have all of their direct reports recognized. If they are seeing, that they have a gap here, then they can go identify which of my direct reports has not received recognition in the last month or whatever it might be. They also have this really helpful direct reports page where they can see just kind of a snapshot of their entire direct report team, the badges that they've earned, when their anniversary is. This is super helpful too. They can actually see when the last time they were recognized by their manager is. So I like to tell managers to don't let this go past 30 days. Again, obviously, this is a test account here. So none of these people have been recognized, but this might say something like, last recognition from you was 60 days ago. That's too long, right? So my suggestion for an expectation for you to set for your managers would be to make sure that none of their direct reports have a date here that is longer than 30 days. A direct report shouldn't ever go more than 30 days without getting a recognition from their direct manager. And that's a goal that you can set for your managers. Here's another view that actually makes that a little bit easier to look at. So you can set a goal for your managers to take a look at this column and make sure that no direct report has gone over 30 days without receiving a recognition from them directly. And of course, they have some other fun things here too. They can pull recognition reporting if they want to maybe call out or highlight some good recognitions in weekly or monthly team meetings. They have full access into the recognitions that have been received within their team. They can take a look at any upcoming birthday or service anniversaries if they want to do a little extra celebration there. So make sure your managers know that they have a manager portal and give them some best practices on what reports they should be pulling, what are their goals for their RES score, or like I said, how often they're recognizing their direct reports. They have the tools. But your job as an admin is to make sure that they know how to use those tools and to set clear expectations and goals for using those tools. While we're in the demo account, because I never like to have a webinar without giving you guys some sort of tease or sneak peek of a new feature or something that we're working on. This one is super relevant to our conversation of managers and something that we have just launched. But it is in beta testing, so it's not turned on. It's just we're turning it on by request, and you can certainly request to have it turned on if you're interested in trying it out. And it's something that a lot of you have been asking for, and that is proportional points for managers. So if you use points and rewards, and if you take advantage of the point allocation budgeting system, you know that in the current state, you can give points to managers on like a whole budget. So, for example, I can say, if you're a manager, you can give out 20 points a month. But what we had been hearing a lot is that admins want to be able to give an amount of points to managers based on their team size. So, what we have built is a way for you to give points to managers based on their direct report count. So this is what it looks like. It's once it's added to your count, it's an additional section in your point allocations where you can say, give my managers 1 point per direct report, or maybe we say 5 points per direct report. And then down here, I'll have a list of my managers. I have, 10 direct reports, which means I get 50 extra points. And then of course it's going to add to any other points that I have, whether it be based on this calculation or this calculation. So it'll tell me what my total points are and how many points are being added based on my direct report count. So again, we are really excited. We actually just launched this about a week ago. It's been a highly requested feature, and I know that a lot of you will be really excited to play with it. So after the webinar, if you want us to turn this on for your account, go ahead and send an email to support@recognizeapp.com, and we can definitely get that turned on for you. Let's see. Dana, I'm going to have you take back the share. We just have a couple of additional slides here. Perfect. And we won't go into necessarily a demo of these, but I did want to just kind of touch on some of the recognized features that can help support your manager engagement. And we will send resources for these things in the follow-up email as well. So if you're not already taking advantage of some of these features and you'd like to explore them to help support your effort in increasing manager engagement, you'll have the resources to do so. Manager training webinars we do the first Tuesday of every month. A lot of companies will share that training webinar link with any new managers that join their organization or are promoted from within. And these webinars focus first on creating buy-in, showing managers why recognizing their direct reports is important and what they're going to get out of it as a leader, and then also diving into their manager portal and teaching them about how to use their manager portal and best practices and what kind of goals they should be setting for themselves. So a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, we can take on some of that responsibility for you if you just have them join our webinars the first Tuesday of every month. Obviously, we talked about the manager portal, making sure they know how to track the engagement of their direct reports. We looked at some different notifications to make sure that we are increasing that visibility. Take advantage of creating badges that are leader specific. So badges that only leaders can use for those above and beyond behaviors or maybe a higher monetary value. Challenges is another great feature to look at. And you can use challenges to incentivize your managers to recognize their direct reports, which is the behavior that we want to see. So, for example, you might create a challenge for managers that says, if you send 5 recognitions a month, you get 5 points yourself, or you get entered into a raffle, or whatever the incentive is. But set challenges for managers so that they know what the expectation is, and then they can get rewarded for meeting that expectation. Nominations, another great feature to give managers a structured and meaningful way to participate in recognition. So again, let them know what they should be recognizing. Create nominations for employees who exhibit certain behaviors or support certain company values or company initiatives or campaigns, and then allow your managers to nominate their employees based on those outlined criteria. So again, it's about showing your managers what they should be recognizing for and giving them structure to their recognition. And then, of course, for you guys as admins, the reporting piece, making sure that we know who the managers are, we know who their direct reports are, and we are using the dashboards to identify your gaps in manager participation. Okay, we have a customer that we want to spotlight today. We reached out to some of our customers who have really positive engagement with their managers, and we asked them to share with us what their best practices are and how they have achieved such great manager engagement. And the customer that we want to spotlight in today's webinar is Catholic Charities of Fort Worth. They, as you can see in the little screenshot there, this is their monthly RES. So they have 86% of their managers sending recognition on a monthly basis. Their annual was close to 100%. So they are rocking it. And here are some of the things that they said about how they have created a manager led recognition program that is driven by their mission and leadership example. So they keep recognition top of mind by they have their senior leadership, including the CEO, actively modeling recognition across the organization. I think that's really important for it to start from the top and trickle down. So if you want your managers doing it, your upper management and your leadership should also be doing it. Recognition is tied to a shared mission, and that reinforces meaningful, purpose driven appreciation. They send weekly reminders to leadership to keep recognition top of mind. Again, that visibility, that accountability, and that reinforcement is really key. And then just on a systematic approach, they have monthly badge limits to encourage timely and intentional recognition instead of delayed appreciation. And I love that they added this in there because we talked a little bit about giving managers like points by direct report. And so setting monthly budgets, whether that be badge limits or a monthly allotment of points, it helps keep the recognition happening consistently. I can even attest to it as a leader myself. I have a monthly budget of points, and I know that today's the last day of the month. So I will for sure be going in and thinking about which of my direct reports I need to recognize because I've got about 30 points left to use. And I want to make sure that I'm giving those points to my employees that definitely deserve it. So creating that that encouragement or the I guess what they said, the timely intentional recognition and not letting excuse me, not letting the pattern of, oh, I'll do that later, and then later turns into next week, and then 2 weeks later it's no longer relevant or it doesn't feel timely to send the recognition, so you might not do it. So it just again like keeps it happening consistently. And the result for them is that recognition is embedded into the daily leadership behavior. And I think this is key. It's consistently reinforced across all levels of the organization. We're going to be sending out a little more information. They had a lot of great tips and tricks that wouldn't fit on all slides or on one slide here. So we are going to be sending out in our follow-up email a full cover on what Catholic Charities of Fort Worth does to increase or keep strong manager engagement in their platform. So look out for that in our follow-up email. And thank you to Catholic Charities of Fort Worth for sharing that insight with us. We are about 5 minutes to the hour. So I want to make sure that we have time to answer any questions that you guys have. So if there are any questions or comments, or even some successful tips that have worked for your organization that you want to pop into the chat, now is the time to do that. I do have something in the Q&A. And Meg is asking, can managers see how many points their direct reports have? Yes, they can in their manager portal. In their direct report view, they'll be able to see the amount of points that all of their direct reports have. And I just because me and Meg talk monthly, I know where the question is coming from. A lot of companies are working towards encouraging redemption of points. And so it kind of leads to a great point of leaning on your managers, especially if you're managing a recognition program for a large organization, really helping to manage all the different pieces. lean on your managers to help. So maybe you are struggling with all of your employees activating their recognized accounts. Your managers can see which of their direct reports are active and which are not. So lean on your managers and say, hey, we have an expectation for you to reach out to all of your direct reports and make sure that they are able to access recognize, that they're not having trouble with password, or that that they're able to successfully log in. Or I think to what Meg is getting at here, maybe you want to encourage employees to redeem the points that they have earned. Lean on your managers and say, hey, if you have anybody who has over X amount of points, can you please reach out to them? Make sure that they know how to get into recognize, what they can redeem for. So lean on your managers too. And I think the more of a hand they have in the operational piece, the more buy-in they will also have. Let's see, anything else? Yes, Amanda, we will send the presentation, the recording, and we will also send the slide deck as well as some additional resources in a follow-up as well. Might a friendly challenge work to increase engagement for managers who may not otherwise recognize their staff? Yes. In fact, as we had kind of talked about a couple slides ago, if you're not already using it, we do offer a challenges feature in Recognize, where you can set little challenges like, recognize a direct report who hasn't been recognized in the last month, or send 5 recognitions this month, or recognize 100% of your direct reports this week. Whatever challenges you wanted to do, you can create those challenges in Recognize, and then incentivize it with possibly maybe the manager gets some extra points if they complete those. Or I've also seen customers do it like a raffle style. So all of the managers who complete the challenge get put into a raffle, and a name drawn for maybe it's an award, or maybe it's a prize of some sort. So yeah, I mean, employees, lower level employees aren't the only ones who like challenges and incentives. Managers like to know that they're being appreciated and rewarded for their efforts as well. So I think it's a super important question and an important thing to bring up. Why not make it fun, and why not give them a little something too? They are the ones that are driving your culture. So let's reward them for it. Let me go back to questions. Nothing else in the questions. Anything else we want to add in the chat? Okay, well, I think we are just about at the hour. So again, I really want to thank everybody for joining today's session. I think it was a really important one. I really hope that you took something away, something actionable, that you can use to help increase that manager engagement with your team. And yes, Sheila, we will let Samantha know that you all said hello and wish her the best. And hopefully we will see her back in just a couple of months. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day, and we will see you next month.